Alright, welcome. Thank you for watching this video. If you're here and you're watching this, odds are you're with us on the FUNiture film, title pending. So thank you for joining us for the 3D production. We are going to be using what's called SVN servers throughout our 3D production. And if you've never worked with an SVN server, this video is oriented to try and help you learn what is an SVN server, what does that mean, how do we use it on the project, and what do you need to know so you can get started working on your modeling, texturing, rigging, animation, anything else you need to start doing. So, this video is going to be broken up into two parts. The first part is going to be about what is an SVN server, what does it mean, how do I kind of like understand what's going on, and then part two is actually like what do you click and how do you use it so that you can get started on the project. If you're really comfortable with SVN servers, you could skip part one if you really want, just to kind of get a refresher, but I highly recommend that everybody watch the whole video, whether you've used it before or not, just so that you can have a refresher and we don't have any mistakes down the road. Alright, so that's part one. Let's get started and start learning about what is an SVN server. Alright, part one. What is an SVN server and how does it work? Like what does that mean? So I'm just going to open up Paint here and kind of draw, and hopefully you can see this while I'm kind of talking in the corner, and you guys can get a good idea of what I'm talking about. So I'm going to be looking at my notes. An SVN server is kind of like Google Drive, so it holds a file online on another computer that acts like a storage device. So there is a computer at DePaul that is going to hold a folder of all the files for the entire film for us. And if you were to look, let's say that there is this little box here, and this is the server. This is going to hold everything that we have for our film. And an SVN server allows it to make copies and send it to different people. So say there's like a person here, and here, and these are all people that are working on the film. The server, the SVN server, what it does is it will send a copy of all of the folders over to you, and you, and you. And what that does is that allows everybody to work on different files at the same time. And then what they'll do is they'll say, here are my changes, and they'll send them back to the server. Then the server says, okay, I'm going to take your changes and your changes and your changes and update it so that the server has a brand new folder of all the updated files, okay? So the idea is it's almost kind of like Google Drive, where you'll check out like a copy of all the files, you can start changing stuff, and then say, make my copies official, and then change the big folder of files that is on the big computer at DePaul that has our whole film on it, okay? So an SVN server is just kind of like a fancy version of Google Drive. This is really useful because everyone can work on stuff at the same time and not really have issues with you have to re-download everybody else's work on Google Drive, and you can be like, oh, I'm missing a file, I have to figure out what file it is. The server will always make sure you have all of the files, all the most recent versions, and it makes it really easy for you to like put up your changes, okay? So it makes it so much smoother and easier to work on the film. The big thing that really helps is that it allows us to do referencing. So, what is referencing? Referencing is this idea that it's almost like a game of telephone that Maya and other 3D programs can do. So imagine you make an asset, like a 3D model. Say you have a 3D model. You can open up, say you want another shot that's going to have that 3D model in it. There's two ways to bring this model into the shot. You can import it or you can reference it. Now, if you import it, try to do this. If you import it, you now have this shot that has the 3D model in it. So if you were to delete this 3D model, it would still be, like the original file, it would still be in that shot, okay? Because the 3D model now lives in that shot file. If you reference it, you just have this shot file, and what it does is that every time you open this shot file, it looks back and says, hey, read this little other file to know what the 3D model looks like. So it doesn't actually understand what the 3D model is. It just says, oh, I'm supposed to go look at what that other file is and then like copy it into here every time you open it. So it's a smaller file, and it lets you change this 3D model because it's not living in the file. It will always go back. So if I decide that I want to make this 3D model, number 2, I don't know if you can see that. If I want to make this 3D model number 2, like an updated version, in the imported version, you're still going to have the old version of the file, 3D model number 1. In referencing, now when you open up your shot next time, it's going to have model number 2. So it automatically updates everything that you're working on. And that lets us work on a lot of different steps of the film at once without worrying about having to bring things in over and over because things get changed or fixed or updated. We have a 3D character, like a 3D rig. Say that gets referenced into a shot animation. So they animate the shot, and then that shot is referenced into lighting. And then that is referenced for VFX. Let's just say that this is kind of a simple pipeline, okay? Anytime, if you're doing referencing, anytime you change this 3D model right here, all these are going to change for you, which is awesome. If you have an imported version, that means that every single step down the road, you have to bring in your new version of the character. The other thing is that if I were to say add another control for the foot to this 3D model, now I don't have to redo the animation I've already done with this character most likely. I can probably just go in and, hey, there's a new controller that I can work with. Cool. You don't have to redo everything. So it saves so much time and allows you to fix things down the road so you don't have to get them perfect the first time. So the way that we're going to work on referencing files is that we have 2 folders that we're going to work in our server. So back in this little server over here, we're going to have 2 types of folders. We're going to have a working folder, and we're going to have a reference folder. Now the reference folder is what is actually going to be read by each of these files, okay? So this little like 3D rig that is brought into everything is going to be the reference folder, and that's going to be, I don't know, box underscore ref, okay? And that's going to be read by every single file that's using that box. In our working folder, we can have as many versions, and that's where we actually edit what the box is. So we can have box version 1, box version 2, box textured, box, rigged. We can have all these different versions, and we can keep working on it. But whenever we want to update the version that you see in every shot after that everybody's going to be using and saying, let me go look at what the box is supposed to be, they're going to be looking back at this one right here. So when you want to get a new updated version, all you have to do is take one of these versions that, like, box is the most recent one, you just save as and save over that, and all of these shots will be updated automatically. Imagine you're animating a film with 50 shots, and you get all the way to the end of animation, and on one of the last shots you realize, oh my gosh, we totally forgot to make a controller for Simone's ear. I don't know, something random like that. And you realize all the shots have been missing the special little ear animation that you need. If you haven't used referencing and you've just been importing your character into all your shots, that means you just have to reanimate the entire film if you want any shots with that ear, because you have to start all of that over. With referencing, you can go back into the original character file update and add a little ear control, and then you still have all the animation and the effects and everything you've done so far, and they just get updated with that new controller. If this is a little confusing, that's okay. We're here to help. If you have any questions, you can talk to Noah or I on Discord or email us, and you'll be able to, we can help understand and explain some of this to you because it's a little complicated. So we're going to have these two folders. Never edit your reference file, this little guy. Never edit this folder. You only want to save over it when you're done with your next version. Always be working in your working folder. That's how it's going to work. And every single thing we work on in 3D is going to have two folders, a working and a reference. One of the biggest things that you need to make sure you don't do with your reference is change the name. Because all of these little files, they look for this box file based on the name of it and where it is. So if you move this to another place, or you change the name to boxes underscore ref, they're all going to break, and they're all going to be like, oh, there's no box. And you have to go back in the folders, and you have to find it again, and it's just as annoying as if you were importing, almost. So the big thing is that you can't move it, you can't change the name. So when we save as, we have to make sure we're using the same exact name. But that is the idea of referencing and why we're going to be using an SVN server, and that's what it does. So it allows everybody to update. So somebody could be working on box while somebody else is animating, and then one day when I open my animation, I'm going to realize, oh, this box has color now, because some other artist was working on that. One thing that you do need to be careful of is this lets everybody work together on a lot of different files and then push them all together, because back over here with this little SVN server area, you can work, person 1 can be working on the box, person 2 can be working on animation, person 3 can be working on lighting. Lighting. All of that's totally fine. And then when they push all the changes back up to the server will understand it, put it all together, and everything will be hunky-dory. If, however, person 1 is modeling the box, but person 2 is also modeling the box, say they're both working on, I don't know, box texture over here. Say they're both working on that file, and they both put up changes, that's where we can have an issue, because the server won't know which person to listen to. If you have two people yelling at you, oh, take my box, and then the other person's like, no, take my box, the server doesn't know who to choose, and somebody's work is going to get lost, like nothing happened. So we do need to be careful, and that's why we have such a detailed and organized and spreadsheet of who is taking what tasks on the film. So we know that no one's going to be accidentally working over somebody else's work or having problems where the server is yelling at you to not know who to listen to. That's really the only thing we have to watch out for. If you're working on different files, like if you're working on, one person's working on something, then another person's referencing that file, that's totally fine. The SVN server is going to be great, but you do need to be careful not to work on the same file at the same time. Okay. So that should cover everything for part 1. That's a basic understanding of what is an SVN server and how does this all work with the film. I hope that made sense. Next, we'll start part 2, which is how do you actually create your folder and start putting your work up into the server. So now that we know what an SVN server is, how do we set it up and how do we start using it? So on the screen that you can see here, I'm actually going to be making my own little copy and repository so that you guys can see everything that we're doing, and we'll go from there. So real quick, the first thing you need to do to start using the server is to download Tortoise SVN. So Tortoise SVN is going to be found at this little website, tortoisesvn.net/downloads. And Tortoise SVN is a software that is free, and you download it so that you can talk to the server at DePaul. This is how we're going to actually download files and upload our new changes. It's kind of like if you were to use Google Chrome or some internet browser to view Google Drive and start putting up files and downloading new ones. It's how you see all the files and everything that you can use. I'm also going to be going down this checklist. We've made a little checklist I'm going to show it on the screen here. This is a little checklist that we've made for the server so that you understand how to set this up, how to update your files, how to do everything that we're going to go over, so that if you need a refresher after watching this video, and you don't want to go through and like actually rewatch the whole video because I know it might be a little long, there's this quick little checklist to remind you and kind of get you back to speed on things. So first step is we're going to download Tortoise. First thing you need to do is you need to make a brand new folder. So you have test folder SVN. This is the folder we're going to use. So if you right click on this folder, I just have it on my desktop on this other screen. There's this little button now. There are these buttons for Tortoise that talk about SVN checkout, Tortoise SVN, and if you get like little menus. That is what Tortoise will do when you download it. So the first thing we need to do to start our new repository is to do an SVN checkout. If you click this, it will open up this little window. This is asking what is the URL or the link of the server that you're using. And this is going to be a link that everybody's going to get. And this is it's called 3D Capstone. That's our server. That's the link to get to our server at DePaul. So once you put that link in there, and this is the folder that you're choosing, which we already set, everything else should be all set, and you got to hit OK. Once you hit OK, it's going to ask you for some login information, like a username and password. You should use the same kind of information that you use to log in to Campus Connect, your student ID and password that you use. The way that we're adding you on to have access to the server is by using your DePaul information, your student ID number, and things like that. So it should ask you for that same login information. Since I've already done it, it's not going to ask me. But once you do it once, you can click this little checkbox to say remember or like permanently keep my access, and that will allow you to not have to log in every time you use the server. So once you hit OK, it's going to open up this little box here, and it's basically just going to start downloading everything from the folder and from the server into your little copy. So you're going to see all of these little files start popping up, and what it's doing is it's downloading all the folders and everything. The more we work on the film, the bigger this is going to be. So it's going to be a bit of a big download when you first start, because it's going to have a lot of files, but in the future, it's only going to download the new stuff. So once you do it once, everything else, it will be quicker from then on out. Okay? So then you can click OK, and you'll realize that this folder now has a little green check next to it. That little green check is Tortoise saying it is up to date, and you are ready to go. So now, if you were to click on this and open it up, I'll drag this over. You're going to see now we have all of these folders, and they all have green checks, and these are all the folders that are on the server. So if you know Maya well, you'll notice these are all folders that happen to when you make a Maya file project. Some of these are new that we've added on our own, which is fine, but every time you work in Maya, which there's going to be another little checklist about that, every time you work in Maya, you're going to set this little folder you made as the project folder, and you'll immediately be able to load everything you need from these files. But if in each of these files, like say scenes, which is where all the Maya files would live, you're going to see all of these folders. If you remember from the first part to this video, you'll remember we have working and ref folders so that our referencing works. We have characters references and characters working, props reference and props working. So if you're working on props, if you go into the reference folder, this is where all of our different referenced folders that all of the other shots, animation, lighting, VFX will all read later on down the road. But when you're actually working on stuff and making changes, you're going to be in the working folder. And each folder is going to have a folder for all of the assets. So in the home folder, there's going to be bowl, curtains, kitchen counter, picture frames, wall lights. In the city, there's going to be all the things you see in the city, and vice versa. And this is where everybody's going to be working on their Maya files. All right. So now that you've got this all downloaded, one other thing that you need to know how to do is update it. So if you've just downloaded this, it's probably going to be up to date, because odds are in the last 30 seconds, no one has made any new changes on the server. But if you're coming from overnight or it's been a few days since you've last worked on it, before you start working, every single time you need to right click on this folder and hit SVN update. That's going to ensure that you're using the most up-to-date files and make sure that you are working with all the correct files that you need to be using. If you don't SVN update, you could be working with old files, and then when you try to put up new changes, the SVN server will be really confused and start yelling at you. So always SVN update before you start working. And when you do that, it's just going to open this, it's going to download anything, and then it will be like update finished, and you can hit OK, and you're all good to go. There's 3 main things you'll need to know how to do. How to add new folders to the server, how to rename files, and then how to move files from one folder to another folder, because those are surprisingly a little tricky. There's some little things you need to know. So if we have our folder, I have this little folder called test files that is in the server. You can tell because they all have green check marks, which means they are on the server and up to date. So in there are some little test files that Josh Jones, Noah, and I have been using to make sure the server is working. There's a little like meme, a random picture, a Pixar picture, this little like menu that Josh put up, things like that. Say we want to put a new picture onto the server, like this little testing picture that I downloaded. If I drag it into this folder, you'd be like, great, it's on the server now, right? No, it's not. The server doesn't know to actually listen to this file. Right now it's ignoring it. You know it's ignoring it because it doesn't have this little green check mark. That doesn't mean it's on the file or on the server. So to add a new file, you have to right click it, go to Tortoise SVN, and then hit this little add button. That add button will tell the server, hey, this needs to go on. Next time we're officially making all our changes and I'm giving everything over to you, add this onto the server. And it will be like, okay, and it gets this brand new blue plus like icon, and that tells you that it is ready to go. It is going to be added next time you officially push all your stuff to the server. The other thing that you need to know how to do is how to rename files. So if I were to rename this checkout _02, if you just rename it normally, you would click this little rename button down here and rename it. Don't do that. That is actually not the correct way to rename something on the server. Because if you rename that, the server doesn't know you renamed it. It just knows, I'm looking for checkout version 02 and now I can't find it. So I guess he must have deleted it by accident. I'll just keep it on the server, and next time I'll just he'll re-download it and get another copy of it that's called the checkout version or _02. It doesn't understand you've renamed it. You need to go up to the Tortoise SVN menu here and hit rename, this little button here. This will tell the server, hey, I'm renaming it, but server, listen to what I rename it so that you know not to be looking for the old name. So now you can go on here and you can say version 3, okay, and you'll see that the new named folder, or the new named file, has the blue plus to be added to the server. Great, huh? Because when the server actually renames a file, it's not just switching the name like we'd think they are. What it's doing is it's copying it and making a new version of it with the new name and deleting the old version. So this is going to add the new version to our server. That's a little confusing, but just know that you need to hit the Tortoise version of rename, not the normal rename. Otherwise, you're going to get a whole bunch of different weird copies of your files that you don't need. All right. The only other thing is, what happens if you edit a file, if you change it up? So if we were to take this picture here and open it up with Paint, and then we can just kind of like mark on it like this, and then save. Okay, we've changed it. It's beautiful. Like that would be the same as adding animation or doing some new, mesh modeling or whatever. You've now changed a file, but it's not a new file. It's the same one. You've just changed some of it. Well, now if you go, you'll realize that this has a red exclamation point. That red exclamation point means this file is different. It's different than the one that's on the server. It could be a newer version. It could be an older version. I'm not sure, but it's different. And this lets you know that when this got this little red exclamation point, that means next time you officially make all your changes permanent to the server, it's going to change and switch out whatever the version of the server has. It's going to switch it out for this new changed version, okay? Like this is going to become the new permanent version. That's what that red exclamation point means, okay? So that's how all of that happens and how it works. So the only other thing you need to know is how to move a folder or a file to another folder. Say we have this other file that's also in the server. How you'd normally move a file is you would just click and drag it over here, right? No, don't do that. SVN, same thing like renaming. SVN Server doesn't know you did that. It's just going to say, where did it go? I'm just going to give him another copy because he must have not downloaded it or something. What you need to do to move another file somewhere is if I wanted to move this Pixar file there, what I need to do is I need to copy it with like Control C, or I can just right click it and hit copy. And I need to paste it into the new one. So now it's in that file. What I need to then do is add it because it doesn't understand. See, there's no green check mark. You got to hit SVN Add. Now it's got that blue plus, perfect. And then for this one, it's going to have it in both places. If I don't want it in this place, I have to go to right-click on it, Tortoise SVN, and delete it. Because it's the same thing. If I just hit delete, the server doesn't know I deleted it. It's just going to keep re-downloading it. I have to tell the server delete it. Okay? Now, everything's going to be good. The last step, though, is say you're done working for the day, and everything is finished, your file's done, time to call it a night, and you need to make all these changes official. Because right now, they've still got these blue pluses and these red exclamation points to say that they will be changed, but they haven't changed yet. How do you change it officially? What you need to do is you'll realize that there's a red exclamation point on the folder. That means that there is some change somewhere that needs to happen. If you right-click this, the big folder, always do the biggest folder, just right-click it. You can hit SVN commit. SVN commit is committing to those changes. It's saying, I want these changes to be official and for them to go onto the real server so that everyone else that updates their files is going to get these files and get the changes I've made. So if you hit SVN commit, you're going to get this little box. And this little box is going to show all the changes you've made. So you can see that we added a new JPEG to our editing folder called Pixar because we moved it over. You can see that we've changed the CG meme file because we drew on it. It had that red exclamation point. You can see that we deleted checkout version 2 and added the new one, checkout version 3. That was what we did to rename the file, if that makes sense. We deleted the old version of that Pixar. Remember, we moved it from test files into the editing folder. We deleted the old version. And we added a brand new testing picture, that little fake Pixar picture that we added in the very beginning. We added that new file. You can see all of these, and if you don't want some of them, you can uncheck them, or you could check them all. But you're going to see all the changes you've made in this little window. Once you're like, yep, make them official, you just have to hit OK. And it's going to make them all official and awesome. And now you'll see that the folder has a brand new green check mark so that anyone else that goes and they download the folder or they hit SVN update, that little download is going to include all of those changes you've made, and everybody else is going to have the changes you've made. So if you updated and committed a brand new, character rig, all the people that are animating are now going to get that version of the character rig. You know what I mean? So that is the way that you're going to actually download everybody's files in the folder and how you're going to push up your new changes. So to review, there is a checklist to go through all that if you just need a refresher later on. We've made a checklist that we'll be linking in the Discord right here that goes through how to do all those things and what the menus are supposed to look like. If you ever get confused, you ever have questions, don't try to guess and just ask us, okay? We can help you. And if you're just guessing and you're like just hitting buttons and you're like, I don't know, it's broken, then stop. Ask us. You're much better off asking us if you're stuck and then learning how to do it correctly than guessing and accidentally maybe deleting something you didn't mean to or messing up somebody else's work. It's it's safer to just ask us for help if you're confused. This is a lot of information. It's okay if this is brand new to you and it's confusing. SVN servers get much easier the more you work with them, and they become a godsend. They're just a little intimidating when you first start. But this is how we're going to be working on the entire film, and how you're going to get started on all the work that you're going to be working on for the next however long you'll be with us. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope this has helped, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. All right, thanks guys. Bye.